Down now to our seventh lesson for the first quarter, 2 lessons away from finishing the first quarter. We will proceed with actually a lesson. I believe this lesson is very familiar to you, even its contents. Even its contents seem very familiar to you. Can't you recall grade 9? You had this module. You had this when you were in grade 9. If you have your modules from last year, you can find this same paper there. It's just that this one is now labeled as English 10. I went with this discussion. I went back to this discussion because upon checking the what is this? The set of competencies for grade 10 English, the knowledge of conjunctions will still be a requirement. And that knowledge on conjunctions comes out to be closely tied to the two processes that we can use or incorporate in our desire to create sentences. And so I'm referring to coordination and subordination. These two sentence processes allow us to put statements together, thereby arriving in just one statement, which may be long in length, maybe not necessarily long. In the first place, the creation of a sentence using coordination and subordination is not dependent on sentence length. It is after of the process and the words that we get to use in that attempt to combine statements. In this discussion, we should remind ourselves first of what makes up a clause. Because as we are dealing with the idea of combining words or sentences together, that will really bring us back to our knowledge of clauses. What is a clause? That is again the question that I'd like to float. I know that this question was asked to you several times. Allow me to reiterate it because wherever you go from here, your understanding of clauses will still come out to be applicable the moment you proceed with several other writing activities. Again, what is a clause? Let's make that float. To answer that question, there are 3 important requirements that need to be met. A clause will be considered a clause first if it is a group of words. Second, in that group of words, there is a subject, there is also a verb. Not just a noun. That noun needs to function as a subject, and that noun can only be called a subject if it exists together with a verb. Third component, that group of words with a subject and a verb can convey a thought. It's just that the thought may come out to be complete or incomplete. If the thought is complete, the clause is an independent clause. If the thought is incomplete, the thought comes out as a dependent clause. Again, those are the 3 important requirements for a clause to be called a clause. And so earlier, I've also said dependent clauses, independent clauses. An independent clause is one that has a complete thought. A dependent clause has an incomplete thought. Between these two, there's one that is capable of standing on its own. In fact, that clause is referred to in itself as a sentence. I'm referring to the independent clause. Independent clause can stand on their own. They don't need to rely on another clause in order for them to survive in a sentence. I mean, an independent clause is already a sentence in itself. And then our goal here in the processes of coordination and subordination is to combine clauses. To be able to do the process of coordination, let's start with coordination. There is a particular group of words that we shall use. In grammar, there is a particular part of speech that can be used to do the processes of coordination and subordination. And so we are referring to conjunctions. Conjunctions are connectors. They allow the connection or combination of ideas and or phrases, fragments. It could be that what you're combining are single word expressions or groups of words, fragments, phrases or clauses. But in this concept of coordination and subordination, our focus mainly will be on clauses, combining clauses. And so, we shall begin with the use of coordinating conjunctions. If we talk of coordinating conjunctions, then we should remind ourselves of the most common acronym that has been introduced to us way back when we were still a lot younger. Back in elementary, we've been introduced to the acronym fanboys, with each letter corresponding to a particular conjunction that's a coordinating conjunction that's available for use. F stands for, A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S for so. Thus, fanboys. Allow me to also remind everybody that among these 7 words, there are some which may also function as conjunctions or adverb. Take, for instance, the word for. The word for may be a conjunction or a preposition. In this context, we should remind ourselves once again of what makes a clause a clause. If the words that come after for contain a subject and a verb, then the word for is a conjunction, a coordinating conjunction. If what comes after for does not contain a subject and a verb, there may be just a noun, but there's no verb, the word for functions as a preposition. And of course, your module contains the reason or purpose or use of that same conjunction. We use for to provide a reason or an explanation for a particular occurrence or phenomenon. Let's have a sentence as an example. There. The teacher got mad for I did not submit my work. There are actually 2 clauses in this sentence. And in fact, these 2 clauses are independent by nature. I'd like to also remind everybody, when we identify clauses using coordination, we will not include the coordinating conjunction. Please keep that in mind. When we identify clauses in the process of coordination, the coordinating conjunction is not to be included. Which means that I think we are now ready to identify the independent clauses. What's independent clause number 1? Kathy.
The teacher got mad, sir.
The teacher got mad. How will we end that independent clause, Kathy? Will we provide an end mark to that independent clause? Independent clause. We will.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Since it's an independent clause, as mentioned earlier, it is already a sentence in itself. If you look at the base sentence, the end mark to the entire sentence is a period. And so if you are to identify the independent clause, you distribute that period to the number of independent clauses found in that sentence. That's independent clause number 1. Thank you, Kat. What is independent clause number 2, Kent?
I did not submit my work.
How will we end that independent clause, Kent?
With a period.
Correct, with a period. So there you have it. I placed it in the chat box, independent clause number 1 and independent clause number 2. Both are ended with periods because both are independent clauses. And what did we use to combine these 2 clauses in just one statement? We have used there the coordinating conjunction. Our coordinating conjunction is the word for. Again, we did not include for in the process of identifying independent clauses because what we're trying to identify are independent clauses. Any questions so far? If you look at that example, the one that we just had, for there definitely functions as a coordinating conjunction. How do we know it? Let's examine the clause that comes after for. So I'm referring there to independent clause number 2. Does independent clause number 2 contain a subject? Does it also contain a verb? Let's examine. The pronoun I is its subject. The verb did submit is part of the second independent clause. So true enough, the second independent clause the second clause is an independent clause, which makes for a coordinating conjunction. What about this? For a while. The teacher was happy for my achievements. There, the word for has appeared once again. However, please look at the words that come after the word for. After the word for, you would know that the words are my achievements. There's a word there that functions that acts as a noun, and it's the word achievements. Can it function as a subject? On its own, there's a chance for achievements to function as a subject. But in that group of words, it does not function as a subject at all. Again, for a noun to function as a subject, it should exist with a verb. It needs to exist with a verb. There's no verb in the words that come after for. In fact, after the word achievements is a period. The sentence reads, the teacher was happy for my achievements. That's it. So after achievements comes an end mark. Nothing else comes after it. And so we just have a noun. We don't have any verb. Therefore, for is just a preposition. Therefore, for that group of words for my achievements is what we can call a prepositional phrase, making achievements the object of the preposition for. Allow me to pick up on another word which could function, which is listed under fanboys, but may not necessarily function as a conjunction. I'm now talking of the word so. So may be a coordinating conjunction. However, it can also be an adverb. Yes. In fact, as an adverb, so can function as an adverb of intensity. Let's use it first as a coordinating conjunction. The doctor came late, so many patients were not entertained that afternoon. I will be sending to you this file. What is independent clause number 1, Jacob? This will serve as your
The doctor came late.
Correct. How will we end this independent clause, Jacob?
With the period.
With a period, correct. Why will we end this with a period, Jacob? It's supposed to be my...
Because it's an independent clause.
And it is already a... I think this can be done... Jacob, it is already a...
Independent clause?
Yes. It's an independent clause, meaning it's already a...
Sentence.
Correct. That's the most important part there in the explanation provided by Jacob. It's an independent clause, which means that it is already a sentence in itself. What about independent clause number 2? What is it, Daniel?
Patients were not entertained that afternoon.
Correct. Many patients were not entertained that afternoon, and I think everybody will agree that it will be ended in the same way that we have done for independent clause number 1. And we will not include so. You don't have to include so. Let's examine, is so really a coordinating conjunction? To know that, to know the answer, let's look at the words that come after it. Do we have a subject in the words that come after so? Kim?
Yes, sir.
What is the subject?
Patient.
What is the verb?
Were entertained.
Correct. So both have been clearly identified by Kim. Patience would be your subject. Where entertained, that's the verb. So the words that come after so have a subject and a verb, which means that we have a clause that comes after so. Therefore, so definitely is in that statement, coordinating conjunction. Let's try to use so not as a coordinating conjunction, but as an adverb, the one that I said earlier. How is that done? Very simple. I am so happy. In this sentence, the word so does not combine clauses at all. All that it does is to provide an intensification of the feeling of happiness. It's different from the statement that says, I am happy. I am happy is intensified. Thus, the presence of the adverb so. In this statement, so is an adverb of intensity. I'd like to also remind people that the letter B in fanboys represents but and not because. The letter S represents so and not since. These are minor errors, but I noticed that students still made them last year. Even the grade 10 students last school year made that same mistake. I don't know, but for some reasons, the letter B was actually associated with because. Possibly, one possible reason I could think of is that both, the word because presents a reason, and there's a coordinating conjunction that talks of reasons. But that's the conjunction for that begins with the letter F. Another important reminder when it comes to the use of these conjunctions, please keep this in mind, people. When it comes to the use of so, but, and yet, there should be a comma. I'll try to put that, be a comma before those coordinating conjunctions. A comma is really required in the use of so, but, and yet. As for the other coordinating conjunctions, the comma is not a requirement, as it now depends on the one who provided the utterance. If the person who provided the utterance deemed that there's a pause necessary before the placement of the other independent clause, then the comma will be placed. But in the case of so, but, or yet, grammar really provides that the three of them really be placed with a comma. Before the three of them, there should really be a comma. For example, I am glad, yet. I'll try to have another sentence.
Say x squared divided by x minus 1. This is the division sentence, the long division sentence. X squared divided by x is x.
I sold my car, so I have a lot of money now. Or
negative times negative x is positive x. Then you divide the quotient is x plus 1. The remainder is 1. Reject the remainder. your asymptotes, your big asymptotes is the line X.
Hope never came, but I am still trying to be optimistic. There's a comma before but. Or
Sounds confusing. Okay, so before we graph, we need to understand this one first. Sana ito po yung lesson natin, no? Wow.
the town is in ashes, yet the people threw in their smiles. So you have there so, but, and yet. And in their use, a comma is really required to be placed before each of these coordinating conjunctions. Any question regarding the use of fanboys for the process of coordination? Expect then that in this process, you'll meet at least two independent clauses. Take note of that. You'll meet at least two independent clauses. And your main goal is to put them together using coordination. So you'll use at least the first category, fanboys. Another category of words that you can use for this process would be your conjunctive adverbs. When people use conjunctive adverbs, it is because the clauses, the independent clauses are being coordinated. And there's a pool of conjunctive adverbs found in your module. You have there for different purposes, like if it's for addition, you have words like in addition, next, also, again, furthermore. If it's for the purpose of comparison, you have also, likewise, similarly, and so on. However, apart from knowing the functions of these conjunctive adverbs, what I'd like you to also consider is the proper use of punctuation marks whenever we use conjunctive adverbs. When a conjunctive adverb is used, two punctuation marks are involved in the writer's attempt to put independent clauses in just one. I'm referring to the semicolon and the comma. The semicolon comes first, followed by the conjunctive adverb, then followed by a comma. So that's the formula. Semicolon, conjunctive adverb, the comma. For example, let's have an independent clause. Independent clause number 1.
Equate that to 0. So the value of ux is equal to -2.
And then let's have independent clause number 2.
Vertical asymptotes. Horizontal asymptotes. Let's now
There.
look at the leading term.
There are two independent clauses there in the chat box. The first one reads, the boy was killed. Second one, his friends did not seem bothered by it. So we are now going to look for a conjunctive adverb which fits the idea or the relationship of these two independent clauses. What's the relationship there? Is it a matter of addition, a matter of comparison, concession, contrast, emphasis? What is it? If you look at the two independent clauses, there seems to be a contrast of what's going on. When someone was killed, supposedly the friends of that person would feel concerned about the incident. But a contrast came out. The friends of that boy were not bothered at all. And so we will look at the pool of options when it comes to conjunctive adverbs under the contrast category. So we could choose from, in spite of, rather, instead, however. Would you agree with me if the word however would kind of make sense in the use? So let's try to use the word however. So in our sentence that coordinates these two independent clauses, we can make it start with the boy was killed. The boy was killed. What comes after the boy was killed, what comes after the first independent clause is the semicolon. And then we will use however. What comes after however is a comma. And then we will put the second independent clause. And so you will arrive at a sentence that looks like this. The boy was killed, semicolon. However, comma, his friends did not seem bothered by it. And look at the word however. I've seen this error last time and I hope this error won't appear again. However is not starting with a capital letter H. A semicolon is not an end mark. Take note of that. Which means that the letter H or the first letter of whatever conjunctive adverb you're using will not be in uppercase. In this case, in this statement, we have coordinated the first independent clause and second independent clause. Sir, what if I make a set? What if I make a structure that looks like this?
Minus 2 equals 0 and x is equal to 2 is a whole in
What if my structure, sir, is this one? The boy was killed, period. However, comma, his friends did not seem bothered by it. The sentence is grammatically correct. I have to tell you that. The sentence is grammatically correct. But the question is, did you do coordination? Unfortunately, you did not. Again, what did I say at the start of this discussion? When we coordinate clauses, we are combining a number of clauses into just one statement. And this statement creates, this structure creates two statements. The first independent clause is made to stand on its own. The second independent clause is introduced by a conjunctive adverb to establish the concept of transition, not coordination. If you coordinate the two independent clauses, you are doing coordination and transition at the same time. The last statement I have provided did transition only. Coordination is not achieved. Regardless, the sentence is correct or the structure is correct. It's grammatically correct. It's grammatically acceptable. It's just that for the goal of coordination, that structure did not achieve it. Has not met coordination. Careful, because when you take your STs, surely, or even the QE, surely you are tasked to do coordination or subordination. So do not do the last structure I have provided, because the last structure I had given just does transition, not coordination. That is why it would make sense here if the letter H of however is in uppercase. Because again, obviously, the first independent clause ends with a period, as followed by another sentence. As a rule, the first letter of a sentence should be in uppercase. Any question regarding the use of a conjunctive adverb?
The same with the first example. The leading term is...
If there's none, allow me to proceed into another another coordinating conjunction that we can use. It's not in your module. Yes, I'm so sorry, but it's not in the module, huh? Let me just mention it. You can use this, a semicolon. You can even use, I don't know how to create it. It cannot be created. This is not an underscore. Huh? This is not an underscore. An M dash. An M dash, because I cannot. I'll open a Microsoft Word file for a while. Huh? I'll open it in Microsoft Word. I'll share it in Microsoft Word. I'll do a share screen on how an M dash would look like. I hope everybody could see this empty document, Microsoft Word document. Your sentence may go this way. The time is perfect. We see, look at that. Look at this. Look at the. My God, we have to zoom that in. Look at this one. We can, for a while. The time is perfect. We can see.
Just update of class. 8 to 9. Okay,
Compared to, wait,
this is not compulsory. To those who wish to join me in my class tomorrow at 8 o'clock, feel free to.
the one in the second line, that's a hyphen.
This is because
The one found in the statement is an M dash. It's a dash.
you have some questions regarding the example.
See the difference in length?
Take note of the horizontal and the vertical asymptotes class.
It's even possible. Wait,
Today, tomorrow.
I think there's even a better way to create this.
Example tao, oblique asymptote.
Ah, there. Sorry. That's the M dash.
Ano, horizontal man sa lahat na to. Dili lang sa
This is the dash. Wait. For a while, ha?
Okay, next example.
There.
Y
That's a dash.
quantity 3x minus 9 all over x squared minus x.
I hope you can see the differences in length between among the three.
Express
The shortest is the hyphen. Here comes the dash. Here comes the M dash. Better use an M dash if you are capable of using it in Microsoft Word. If you are typing something in Microsoft Word and if you're separating independent clauses, use this M dash. This is the M dash, this one. However, it's just that when people write, when they actually do the task of writing something down using their hands, when you handwrite something, you might not really be able to clearly set the difference between the length of an M dash and a dash. That's why the M dash is rarely introduced when it comes to handwriting activities. They are just introduced to the dash. They intend to equate the dash and the M dash. But the difference is much more manifested when you do it online or when you have a soft copy of a document. Notice how I created the M dash earlier. Take for instance, so please look at this. After one character, you type 2 dashes and 2 hyphens, and then you type a character right away. Then you press space. Thus comes the M dash. Or if you want, you can insert it as a symbol. There's also an available symbol for this. What goes together with the dash or M? Again, we practice the use of the dash when we handwrite. But if you really do something online, better do it with an M dash. When do we use them? When we regularly separate independent clauses, especially if one yields an effect, like there's a cause effect, there's a reason that gets to be provided, then you can use the dash or the M dash. If it's a matter of identifying reasons, then you can use the semicolon. You can just simply use the semicolon. For example, I killed her.
Okay, and I will find another example. Let's look at
I killed her, semicolon. I was not happy of seeing her face. A semicolon may do. That is why the dash or the M dash and the semicolon can function as coordinating conjunctions. So in lieu of those word conjunctions, you can use punctuation marks. At whatever approach you have decided to incorporate, what you're doing there is to put independent clauses together. Sir, when we identify the independent clause using punctuation marks, will we include the punctuation marks? Take note, those punctuation marks are acting as coordinating conjunctions, and the rule still applies. We will not include the punctuation mark because they're coordinating conjunctions in identifying independent clauses. Any questions so far? Any question? If there's none, let me proceed to another category, another process, and that's the process of subordination. The process of subordination now involves another clause. The independent clause has to be there. We cannot have a sentence if we don't have an independent clause. But if you only have independent clauses, we are doing coordination. In this process of subordination, we are acknowledging the presence of another kind of clause, and that's the dependent clause. Fortunately, in our lessons 2 and 3, we've had a discussion on dependent clauses that function as modifiers, as adverbs and as adjectives and adverbs respectively. All adjective clauses, all adverb clauses are dependent clauses, meaning they need an independent clause in order for them to survive in a sentence. Without the independent clause, they cannot exist. They cannot stand on their own. And there are words that we use to begin these dependent clauses. We call them subordinating conjunctions. When we talk of subordinating, when we talk of subordinating conjunctions, this would remind us of the common subordinating conjunctions that are in our alley. For example, you have because, although, since, while, so that. Yeah, the letter S in fanboys is so, but there is another S subordinating conjunction, but that's so that. Let's not, just because you'll see so, it doesn't mean that right away it is a coordinating conjunction. Look at again the word that comes after it. But let's also be careful if it looks like this. Like, for example,
-3 minus -24, +21. Though the remainder is
this one. I just thought of this now. The fire was huge, so that scared me.
the quotient,
Can we see so that here?
therefore,
We can.
the oblique asymptote is
We can actually see so that. But you will not take them as one semantic unit. Because if you look at the words that come after so, the word that there actually functions as a demonstrative pronoun. And that demonstrative pronoun is the subject of the independent clause that can be found after so. What makes my sentence grammatically incorrect?
you may grab the X and the Y.
People, you tell me now what makes my sentence grammatically incorrect.
Okay, let's grab
Kin,
this time.
there's a missing. Kin is doing this with his finger.
Asa na mag-una?
There's a missing comma, correct. Huge, so that scared me. Imagine that, no? I noticed the error. It really helps. It really helps for you to be meticulous when it comes to sentence construction. Our goal, while we are acting as second language learners of the English language, we will do our very best to understand and practice the many rules that we have learned in our study of the language. The fire was huge, so that scared me. So that is not taken here as one semantic unit. So it's not a subordinating conjunction. So is our coordinating conjunction. That is a demonstrative pronoun which functions as the subject of the independent clause. This expression is different. This expression presents effect, the cause-effect relationship. For example, I married her so that, this is so rude. I married her, okay, so that I could have a happy life. I married her so that I could have a happy life. I married her so that I could have a married life. Stupid. I married her so that I could have a happy life. What's our independent clause? Verb.
So the x-intercept is y equals 3 halves. You can express the x-intercept as a coordinate, we can also
Sorry,
have
I think
a
my connection is
conditional and
unstable. Yes, Bem, can you give us the independent clause in that statement?
So to be clear with
I married her, sir.
Correct. It's I married her. There is a rule when it comes to identifying dependent clauses. If for independent clauses, we do not include coordinating conjunctions. For dependent clauses, the subordinating conjunction should be included. What's our dependent clause here, Kathy?
and then start with the
So that
first
I
class
could have
no
a happy
x
life.
equals negative
Correct. So that I could have a happy life. Follow-up question, Kath. Will we end this dependent clause with a period?
was negative.
We won't. Correct.
The rules don't tell us
Sir,
no.
why, sir? We ended independent clauses with a period. Yes, we will because they are sentences in themselves. But a dependent clause has an incomplete thought. Therefore, it cannot stand on its own. Therefore, it is not a sentence.
Right?
As it is not a sentence, it will not have an end mark. No end mark for it.
I would leave across another graph
And all dependent clauses are introduced by a subordinating conjunction. Take note of that.
Therefore, if you plot
All dependent clauses begin with a subordinating conjunction. But same thing, just like for, there are conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, which may not function as conjunctions at all. Again, we are reminded of what comes after that word. Take, for instance, the word before. Before may be a subordinating conjunction. It may also be a preposition. For example, let's have the sentence.
Depending on how you're going to graph the function later on. So, how do we graph? Sir, let's notice that the graph is ambiguous if you don't have coordinates. So, you need to assume values
There.
that are located.
I have already known how to cook before we met.
These values must be.
You look at the word before and the words that come after it. You have a pronoun we, you have a verb met, which means that before is part of a clause. It's part of a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. In this sentence, before is a subordinating conjunction. But before can also be a preposition. For example, I have.
As much as possible, you'll have 5 coordinates to represent a whole. But this is the value of your x.
There. I have known how to cook before meeting her. Look at the word before again and the words that come after it. You have the words meeting her. Is there a word there that can function as can function as a subject? On its own, there is, and that's the gerund meeting. That gerund, being a gerund, can actually function as a subject because it's a noun. Gerunds are nouns. They have the ability to function as subjects. But let's look at the word that comes after meeting. It's her, a pronoun. In fact, it acts as a receiver of the act of meeting. Meeting whom? Her. So there's no verb. We don't have any verb in that group of words. Therefore, before meeting her is actually a prepositional phrase, making before a preposition. We don't have a subordinating conjunction in this statement. The same applies to after. The same applies to while. Always look at the words. Take note not just to these subordinating conjunctions, but also to the coordinating conjunctions. Always look at the words that come after the conjunction. If the words contain a subject and a verb, then what you have there is indeed a conjunction. Without the subject or without the verb in that group of words, then that conjunction is acting merely as a preposition, or in the case of so, it's acting as an adverb. Any questions so far? Any question? If there's none, I think we can proceed with the checking of the FTs on Thursday. So this afternoon, I will not have to meet with you. This take note, this afternoon, there's no need for us to meet. We'll just do values add on Thursday instead. I'd like to also, while the recording is still going on, I'd like to share this to everybody. In my YouTube channel, in my YouTube channel, there's someone who asked. There was a comment in my YouTube channel. I don't know who the person is. There was someone who asked, where is this student from? I don't know who that person was, to whom that person was referring to. Was that person referring to me or to a student in the discussion? I did not also know where that video or what video was commented. There really was a comment, and it appeared in my discussion board. Where is this student from? I don't know. I'm just sharing that at random because that's an indicator. That's a proof that there's a person out there looking at my videos, and probably that person has decided to subscribe now that I have reached 280 subscribers, and I now have 3,000 public watching hours. People, let's help each other. Don't worry, if my YouTube channel gets monetized, you'll all have a share of it. Your share will be in my version of prayers for each of you. That'll be all for this morning, grade 10. Goodbye and thank you so much.
Goodbye.